Did anybody else get that? We'll do it live. Yes, Keenan got it. He's ashamed that he got it, but he got it. Jeff got it. Yeah. Yay. Yes, he did. Okay.
Okay, we're live.
Hello, everybody. I will now call the Finance and Corporate Services Committee meeting to order at 5:05 p.m. Welcome, everybody, to the virtual meeting. As this year, due to COVID-19 pandemic physical distancing measures, the committee is meeting virtually. Members of committee, executive management, city clerk are participating via video conference, and senior leadership team isn't visible but available to answer questions on the agenda. We don't have any open delegations, but for presentations, we have the Deloitte LLP concerning the 2020 audit service plan. I will now virtually call up Craig Millar, Director of Finance Treasurers, to provide a brief introduction concerning the 2020 audit service plan. Mr. Millar.
Thank you, Chairman Morales. I'm going to pass it over to Pina Kolakia. She's the, sorry, Pina, if I pronounce your name incorrectly. Pina is the Senior Auditor from Deloitte, and she's here to speak about the 2020 Audit Service Plan. So I believe, Ryan, if you're going to share your screen with Pina, she can pull up the presentation.
So I think I've shared my screen. Can I get a thumbs up if you can see my presentation and hear me? Okay, great, thanks very much. So I come to you today with my audit service plan for the year ending December 31, 2020. And this plan comes on an annual basis to this Finance and Corporate Services Committee in your oversight role as it relates to financial reporting for the consolidated financial statements of the corporation of the City of Barrie. This audit plan covers, as listed here, the consolidated financial statements of the city, as well as the standalone financial statements of 3 entities that are consolidated here. These include the Public Library Board, the Police Services Board, and the Business Improvement Area. Deloitte is the auditor for all of these entities, and these entities roll up into these financial statements, and this audit service plan covers our work as external auditors. With respect to our audit work, we've identified 2 areas of significant audit risk, and you see those on your screen. These 2 areas of risk are consistent with the audit risks identified in prior years as auditors, and these areas of audit risk, their classification as significant are driven by accounting standards that require auditors to consider where the risk of fraud could occur in the financial statements as they relate to financial reporting. Our materials today provide you with information around the audit scope and how we address these areas of audit risk. I can confirm to you that our approach with respect to the audit and how we assess risk is unchanged from the prior year. There have been no situations with respect to our work at the City of Barrie that have caused us to change our risk assessment. As well, one of the concepts that we apply as auditors is the concept of materiality. So you will see here that we use a reference between 2.5% and 5% of expenses for each of the entities that we audit, as well as the consolidated financial statements to assess materiality. We then use 5% of that number as our numeric benchmark to report back to this committee on the results of the audit. The percentages we use are unchanged year over year, and our reporting back to this committee will likely be at the same level as prior periods. Our audit plan also, for your information, describes how fraud could occur with respect to financial statements and the audit approach to address the risk of fraud. These 6 audit procedures are consistent with last year and are the required audit procedures for auditors to perform in conjunction with a financial statement auditor. Finally, our audit plan describes the work of specialists. So specialists could exist both within the organization or could be on the Deloitte audit team. So we describe for your audit approach and the use of specialists. So we do rely on the city's independent actuary. You will be well aware that the city's financial statements contain a material liability with respect to post-employment benefits, and the city's independent actuary performs a valuation and then related extrapolations to assess both the liabilities and expenses associated with that liability. we would on an annual basis confirm our reliance with the city's actuary. In addition, the city does have both internal engineers and external independent engineering consultants that are used to assess the liabilities related to landfill closure and post-closure liabilities. These liabilities are presented in the financial statements to account for on an accrual basis the cost of your landfill closure costs upon the consolidated financial statements. We will continue to review the data and assumptions used by these engineers. And then finally, we use information technology specialists to test the internal control environment and the general computer controls in the organization, particularly the controls as they relate to SAP. Our audit plan also describes for you working remotely. The committee may be well aware that for the 2019 audit, certain audit procedures were performed remotely. And as well for this year's audit for 2020, we have started our interim planning and those procedures were performed remotely. As we plan for audit procedures in the months of February, March, and April of 2021, there may be a situation where we are required to perform our audit work remotely. And as such, we've identified for the committee's information some of the innovative tools that we have to facilitate electronic audit evidence and the performance of electronic audit. You will see here some of these tools highlighted for you. Some of these tools were implemented for the 2019 audit and will be used again for the 2020 audit. And finally, I did want to just confirm with the committee that we have provided for you a response on our areas of significant audit risk. And these were the two areas that you're seeing here. The proposed audit response is consistent with the prior year. With respect to revenue recognition, we will look at any impacts of COVID-19 on the recognition of revenues during the year, as in some cases there may be year-end deferred revenue balances related to revenues that remain unearned at year-end. Finally, our audit plan for the information of the committee provides some information around changes in both auditing and accounting standards. CAS 540 is a new auditing standard that speaks to how auditors audit accounting estimates. And we've provided some information for you today around the new standard. And the new standard does require additional reporting back to this committee around the various accounting estimates. We have always provided this information to the committee as the Deloitte approach has been consistent with international standards. And now this accounting standard is applicable in Canada. So you will continue to receive from Deloitte information around the areas of accounting estimates. And finally, our document also looks at the new accounting standards that are applicable to governments. And we've provided a summary for you here in this appendix. So a couple of things to note is that a number of the accounting standards have an elongated effective date. So you will see here on the right-hand side, the standard setters have allowed governments to elongate their effective date by 1 year for these new accounting standards. The most significant accounting standard for the municipalities is going to be the accounting standard on asset retirement obligations. This accounting standard is very similar to the accounting that we currently use for landfill closure and post-closure costs. And this accounting standard looks at accounting for liabilities associated with the retirement of assets on an accrual basis. And as such, does require inventorying the city's assets, looking for any legal obligations associated with retirement. So that concludes the formal comments on my audit service plan. And through the chair, I'm more than happy to take any questions or comments on my audit plan document.
Thank you so much for the presentation. Are there any questions of member of committee? I saw Mayor Lehman, go ahead.
Just one, and thank you, Pina. I wonder if you could give the committee a little bit of color as to what you see as the increased risks associated with COVID on two levels. One is remote audit. Now, I know this is your second one because you had to do the last one largely remotely. But what additional risk does it represent to not be able to go through paper, for example? And then secondly, the risks associated with revenue recognition and verifying revenue, in fact, because a lot of our systems have gone online in terms of how we collect revenue.
Sure, thank you. So through the chair, I'll respond firstly to the question about remote audits. So typically we would look at the internal control environment, and that is part of our work to look at what controls had to be modified as a result of COVID-19. So in some situations, there is likely going to be, for example, electronic approval of invoices and transactions. That approval typically would have been retained in paper form in prior years. And this year would have been perhaps received electronically through email or other electronic processes. So our audit work would require that if a transaction is selected for testing, that there would be evidence of that approval. In the days of in-person auditing, that approval would have been provided in paper format. In the current environment, if the transaction is selected for testing, then we would require evidence of the electronic approval. In some cases, it may be an email. We would always test for looking at expenditures that the approvals are within the authority limits. So that would be an example of where COVID-19 would change the control environment. With respect to revenue recognition, we would look at examples where the performance obligations were not achieved, and therefore revenue is deferred at year end. So there could be situations where, for a variety of reasons, there is not performance, and therefore there is a year end deferred revenue balance. And that testing looks at both what is in deferred revenue, but also cash receipts that are processed during the year. We would anticipate in some cases there would be material deferred revenue transactions, just given the nature of the transactions that we've had in 2020. One example could be perhaps recreation, where someone may have recorded or requested something prior to the lockdown in March.
Okay, thanks very much. Thanks, Mr.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman. Any other members of committee have any other questions for Pina or on their presentation? Seeing none. Any other members of council have any questions? Seeing none. Thank you, Pina, for the presentation. Very much appreciated. And we will, Mr. Millar, is there anything you would like to communicate in addition to what Pina communicated?
Through you, Chairman Morales, thanks for the opportunity there. Just really want to highlight the great work that both city staff have done during this time of COVID. We had to deal with the audit when it hit, and we had to really change a lot of how we did things, as well did Deloitte. So it was a good learning experience from us. And as someone who used to work in public accounting, I think it's pretty cool now that we can do this all remotely. So I guess the standard has changed going forward. So there will be some challenges this year, as Pina highlighted some of them, but I think it'll be more efficient than what we went through last year, and it should be a good audit.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I'm being told that a recommendation is required to accept the audit service plan. So the wording would be the 2020 audit service plan, that the 2020 audit service plan presented by Deloitte LLP to the Finance and Corporate Services Committee on December 14th, 2020 be approved. Could I have a member of committee put that on the floor? Mayor Lehman, seconded by Deputy Mayor Ward. Okay, all those in favor, please indicate. In favor, perfect, none opposed, that carries. We don't have any standing items or committee updates, and we don't have any referred items. So we'll move on to the advisory committee reports. We have 4 advisory committee reports to be received. Can I have a member of committee put the following advisory committee reports on the floor to be received? Report of Accessibility Committee, November 12th, 2020. Report of the Investment Board, November 18th, 2020. Seniors Advisory Committee, November 23rd, 2020. And report of the Community Safety and Wellbeing Committee, November 25th, 2020. Could I have a member of committee put that on the floor? Mayor Lehman, seconded by Deputy Mayor Ward. All those in favor of adopting the reports? Any opposed? None. That carries. We have 2 recommendations from the advisory committee reports that we just adopted. The first recommendation is from the report on the Senior Advisory Committee dated November 23rd, 2020. And I'm going to just read it at large. We have obviously a digital copy of this. The Inclusive Community Grant. Number 1, that the Senior Advisory Committee supports the application for funding through the Inclusive Community Grant administered by the Ministry for Seniors and Accessibility in order to support advancements to the City of Barrie's age-friendly community planning efforts and the Seniors Without Walls program. Section 2, that should the funding through the Inclusive Community Grant be successful, City staff report back to the Senior Advisory Committee on the progress of the City of Barrie's age-friendly community planning efforts and the Seniors Without Walls program. Could I have a member of the committee move the motion on the floor? Councillor Jim Harris, seconded by Councillor Gary Harvey. Councillor Thompson's, go ahead if you want to speak to the motion. No, you just want to vote on it. Okay, perfect. Do we have any comments from anybody? No. All those in favor, please indicate. In favor, none opposed. That carries unanimously. And then the second recommendations from the report of the Community Safety and Wellbeing Committee, November 25th. The motion is as follows: draft Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan 2021 to 2024 action items. The action items identified in the document circulated on November 26, 2020, as part of our shared plan for a safer Barrie, the City of Barrie's first Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan 2021 to 2024 draft, circulated on November 26, be endorsed in principle and form the basis of the Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan to be presented to General Committee and City Council. Can I have a member of the committee move the motion? Councillor Thompson, seconded by Mayor Lehman. And is that a question, Mayor Lehman, or just seconding it? Just seconding it? Okay, perfect. No questions on this? All those in favor, please indicate. That carries. Any opposed? None. We have no reports of committee, and we can be adjourned. So this concludes the Finance and Corporate Services. Over to you, Mayor Lehman.
Thank you very much, Councillor Morales. With the permission of committee, we will move directly into the general committee meeting, which was scheduled for immediately following finance. So even though we're 9 minutes ahead, we can get started. So I will call a general committee to order. There may be some other members of council. Oh, there we are. Okay, I think we've got, so Councillor McCann, we've got everybody. Good. I'll call general committee to order. Welcome to our virtual general committee meeting. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, general committee is continuing to practice physical distancing. All members of council, executive management team, and the city clerk are participating via video conference tonight. Senior leadership team who have reports on tonight's agenda are not visible but available to answer questions. As always, we'll run through the consent agenda first. I'll read out the title associated with the recommended motions from the staff reports and the items for discussion. Members of general committee can ask the item be held for further discussion. If the item's not held, the motion printed on the agenda is deemed to be approved on consent. No further discussion of the item will take place this evening, and the recommendation will go forward to City Council for consideration at our next meeting. So we'll start with the reports of reference, advisory, or special committees, and yes, we'll do that live too. The report of the City Building Committee is dated December 1st, 2020. It's to be received. City Building Committee has recommended the following motions. First, from correspondence from the City of St. Catharines dated October 7th, 2020. This is a resolution regarding the Bill 197, the Economic Recovery Act, regarding development approval requirements for landfills. The committee's recommended a motion. Anybody want to hold that? Seeing none, that's approved. The next item out of City Building Committee was a pedestrian and cyclist safety review at the intersection of Tiffin and Lakeshore. No holds on that item. It is approved. Finally, we have an item regarding the implementation of the Climate Change Adaptation Strategy Action Item 6.7 regarding the urban forest. No holds on that. It is approved. The report of the Finance and Corporate Services Committee from December 14th, that is tonight's meeting that just ended, it is to be received. The Finance and Corporate Services Committee recommended to us the 2020 Audit Service Plan. Does anybody want to hold that? Seeing none, that is approved. And as just approved as well, members of the General Committee, we have a motion regarding an inclusive community grant. Anybody want to hold that at general? Nope, that is approved. And a draft community safety, the draft community and safety wellbeing plan action items. No holds, that is approved. So the three motions we just passed to committee are recommended to council. Staff reports tonight. The first staff report is with regards to fire dispatch service agreements and authority to add complement. No No holds. Councillor Morales?
Just holding it for just some quick
Holding it? Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. Held by Councillor Morales. Next item is a sewer use bylaw 2012-172. No holds on that. That is approved. The next item is an update to the waste management bylaw 2016-108. No holds there. The item is approved. The next staff report on the agenda is to repeal and replace the designating bylaw 9230. That's with regards to 70 and 72 High Street. It's to correct an error. No holds there. That is approved. Next item is with regards to Johnson Street and Little Avenue bicycle lane implementation, wards 1 and 8.
Hold, please.
Held by Councillor Jim Harris. And the next item is with regards to delegated authority for a downtown curbside pickup pilot program as part of our COVID recovery efforts. No holds on that item. It is approved. Finally, we have a staff report on heavy truck traffic on Dunlop Street through downtown. No holds on that item. That is approved. And that is to remove Dunlop Street, for those asking, from the permitted list of heavy truck traffic routes in Barrie. Items for discussion. We have several placed by members of council tonight. First is an investigation into classifying industrial roadways as primary roads for snow plowing. It's put on by Councillor Harvey. No holds. That is approved. We have an item regarding additional traffic safety measures on White Oaks, put on by Councillor Jim Harris. No holds. That is approved. The next item is a letter of support to the Barrie Pickleball Club grant application, put on by Councillor Kungle. That is approved with smiles. Next item is with regards to an appointment to the Barrie Municipal Nonprofit Housing Corporation Board. It's put on by myself. No holds. That is approved. Next, we have support for the Redwood Park Communities application to the Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation Rapid Housing Funding Initiative. No holds. That is approved to write that letter. And that was put on by Deputy Mayor Ward. Finally, we have an item put on by Councillor McCann regarding the 400 Cup Pond Hockey Tournament. No holds. That is approved. Okay, we will deal with the two items that were held a little bit later. First, we have an eagerly awaited presentation, no doubt. That is concerning the 2021 business plan and budget overview. Mr. Craig Miller, you are up.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman. Ryan, you want to share the screen or pull up the presentation? So hopefully everyone can see the presentation. I can't see everyone on the screen, but I assume you will stop me if you can't. There we go. So Mayor Lehman, members of General Committee, thank you for the opportunity to present the draft 2021 business plan and budget overview presentation. Let's hope this time next year we're all doing this in person at City Hall, but we will adapt accordingly. Sorry, I'm just having a little challenge advancing my slide here. Bear with me 1 second.
So we can see the collage of pictures at the moment, Craig.
All right, so I'm not sure if I moved that along or if Ryan did it, but we'll, oh, I guess it's not me. I think it's Ryan. If we go back to the slide number 2 and we'll do it this way, Ryan. So 2020 certainly has been an extremely unique year, and of course it continues to be. The city has changed the way we did business, finding efficiencies and reducing spending where possible to help limit the negative impacts brought about by the COVID-19 pandemic. Despite the challenges, the corporation was there for residents and businesses throughout the ongoing emergency and recovery, delivering key services that impact the daily lives of people living and working in Barrie. These include police, fire, transit, recreation, virtual cultural events, parks and operations, snow removal, garbage collection, safe drinking water and wastewater. The 2021 budget highlights the challenging but necessary decisions the corporation needs to make in addition to balancing investments in the city's rapid growth, maintaining existing assets, financing debt, and continuing to support our service partners. With Barrie's population expected to grow to 210,000 by 2031, the budget outlines the corporation's plan to fund our growing city while taking into consideration the unique economic realities that are unfolding on a local, national, and global scale. Next slide, Ryan. So if you remember back in October, Standard & Poor's, the credit rating agency, reaffirmed the city's AA credit rating. They looked at the impact of COVID, and they did note and stated that they believe that Barrie's prudent financial management practices and the cost containment efforts taken in 2020, as well as the economy that they expect will remain broad and healthy, should mitigate the direct fiscal impact to the city. I think that's an important testament to the city's past performance on financial management, as well as the fact that council and staff do follow our financial policy framework in making decisions. Next slide. So just a reminder too, the city received funding from the province through the Safe Restart Agreement. So for transit, that was 2.6 million, and all other city services, 6.6 million. So just a reminder, the funds are to be used to address COVID-19 operating costs and pressures in 2020. Any excess funding not used are to be put into reserves to address any 2021 COVID-related pressures. Municipalities are required to report back to the province by March 31st, 2021. So Finance and Corporate Services Committee just had a presentation from our auditor. Deloitte says our fiscal year end is December 31st. So in January and February, we will be finalizing all our costs, recording them, all our revenues, and getting an understanding of where exactly we're going to be. As part of that exercise, we will be, when we identify those costs, we will look for opportunities to pull in the provincial Safe Restart funding into the 2020 year-end results. And as we have in past years, that would be presented in the year-end report, usually around the beginning of March. The city did apply for phase 2 funding on November 6th. At this point, we have not yet received a response back. And in terms of 2021 provincial Safe Start Restarting Fund, I don't believe we've heard any direction on opportunities yet for any additional funding available, but we will certainly be watching for it. Next slide. So if you just take a reminder, go back in time, which seems like years ago, but back in June 29th, Council approved the budget direction report. From that report, staff have been working in a lot of cases remotely, putting this budget together to come to a conclusion of where we at. We had extensive meetings with the executive management team. And here we are on December 14th with the overview presentation. Councillors will be receiving our gift to you from the Finance Department, your Christmas reading binder. We're working with the clerk's office, and the elves and Santa Claus should be coming by your place within the next couple of days. And for those of you that are now virtually don't want to see any more paper and completely remote, tomorrow the binder will be posted on the websites to get an early start on your Christmas reading. We are back here on January 11th. So our main big service partners, the county, the police, and the library will be here to present their budgets. Then on January 18th, council deliberation with a hopeful passal date of the budget on January 25th. I would remind you on the January 28th date, we do have a budget staff report that goes along summarizing all the recommendations from the binder. As well, there is an alternative section in that report, and as we do every year, we will look at other options that council may be interested in terms of lowering the tax rate, and utilizing a reserve such as the reinvestment reserve or community benefit reserve, as it is commonly known as. Next slide, Ryan. So going back to June, we did get council direction to cap any potential 2021 tax increase at 1.95%, excluding the dedicated infrastructure renewal fund levy. Identify of any service level changes to achieve the target, and as well contributions to the dedicated infrastructure renewal fund not to exceed 1%. And of course, our service partners got the same message of a 1.95% target. Next slide. So as we've done in prior years, we've built the 2021 tax rate supported budget on a building blocks approach. So what we basically start off with is looking at what does it cost us to maintain our existing service levels. So for 2021, you can see on the screen, it's $5.4 million increase, which works out to roughly a 2.19% increase on the average tax bill. So a lot of those costs are related to contract increases. So for example, waste collection has built-in percentage increases to it. It also includes any labor increases and that sort of thing. So it's really just the status quo. On top of that, we look at debt management. So for 2021, there is a $5,000 increase, or a 0.36% hit on the levy. This is related to the tax supported portion of debt related to Harvey Road Crossing and as well as the Dunlop Streetscape project that was completed. I'll point out that the actual total debt servicing costs increase in 2021 is at 2.9 million, but approximately 2 million of that is funded mainly from development charges. And of course, the 905,000 is the tax portion. Growth strategy, you may be wondering what that is. That's an increase of 500,000. So if I can remind council that in the 2020 budget, there was a strategy that was recommended whereby we took out $2 million from reserves, $1 million from the stabilization reserve, and $1 million from the reinvestment reserve. And we applied that against new resources that were required to get us ready for the growth as it is happening. And the concept is that we would then each year reduce that draw from the reserve by 500,000. So this year would be a draw of 1.5 million. And of course, the $500,000 of pressure on the 2021 levy. Realized assessment growth, we're at $4 million. It's an aggressive target. We're a bit below that at this point in time. We've seen a lot of activity in the planning department, and we do look forward to the day when we get some benefits of the growth on the assessment roll. Ultimately, it just spreads the cost among more properties. Investments and service recommendations. So when you do get your binder or you go online tomorrow, you can look at page 21. So EMT does have some service level recommendations in there, which are adding costs of around $751,000. They're needed resources that EMT has approved. EMT has also included some service level reduction intake forms that I make sure that all councils, as you review the materials, you get familiar with those reductions. They're netting down the overall ask for service level recommendations at $352,000 or 0.14%. Service partners are at 3.2 million or 1.29%. So the details of all the service partners, we've got some good information are in the binder. So that would be all of them. The number's a bit lower than probably you've heard from what was reported on the county in the papers. We do fund our capital component differently. It's more of a smoothed out approach. So if you were to add together the city services and the service partners, it's at 6.4 or almost $6.5 million increase. And that works out to a 2.59% increase in the tax levy. Staff are recommending a continuation of the dedicated infrastructure renewal fund at 1%. When we get into the capital section of the report, we can you'll be able to see why why this recommendation is being made. So if you add it all together, it comes out to a 3.59% increase on the average tax bill. So for the benefit of our media personnel who usually ask me this question in person when we do this at City Hall, that works out to $160 annual increase for a typical home. Typical home assessed in Barrie is $367,550. So I would want to remind everyone that's an assessed value. The last time MPAC did an assessment review was in 2015. So taxes are based on the assessment value and not market values. So next slide. So if we look at the overall operating budget funded primarily by tax, so this number in front of us is 370 million. It doesn't include water, wastewater, or parking. But I just quickly want to point out a couple of important elements to you. You can see from the large green pie that 71% or 262 million is funded from property taxes. The next biggest piece of pie, it's the darker green color. It's the contribution from reserves of 35.7 million or 10%. So the city does draw from its reserves each year to fund some operating costs. Most of this is related to debt servicing costs. So we recover the development charge revenues from our reserve to fund some of those debt payments. And then of course it includes other things such as the growth strategy where we're drawing 1.5 million out of reserves as well. The third piece of the pie, I'm going to call it purple, but I don't think it's really purple. I'm sure there's a more fancier name to it, but to me it looks like purple. So fees and service charges are at $26.5 million or 7%. That's a significant number in that if you were to compare it to 2020, it's actually down by about $7.5 million. And that's related to COVID costs. So in recreation services and transit, their budgeted revenues are down. Now they have reduced costs where they are able to. So part-time salaries are down, and any fixed costs are variable costs they have reduced. So the net impact is more or less a wash, but it is something of note. So if we go to the next slide, Ryan. So my favorite, I just want to highlight again because it's worth mentioning for 2021. So when we look at the pie of property taxes, of which properties pay what, if you add residential at 72% and multi-res at 4%, that's 76% of our tax comes from residential, 21% from commercial, and 3% from industrial. So something to keep in mind for 2021 is that MPAC was scheduled to do a reassessment of all properties in Ontario in 2020. The province, because of COVID, delayed that process, and they haven't yet indicated when it will happen. So for those properties owners that have for the last 4 years have seen an increase in their taxes above and beyond the city's rate, there'll be a bit of a benefit to you because there'll be no phase in for next year. So there'll be no additional costs for any properties that have seen such an increase. So that will help some property owners. In the provincial budget that was just passed, I believe last week, there was a reduction in business education taxes on commercial and industrial properties. It was a 30% reduction. So that will hopefully help some of our commercial and industrial owners within the city. Again, this is just for their education part of their tax, which is a significant part. So that's very positive. The province has also introduced an option of a subclass for small businesses. So all the details are still yet to come out on that. We as a city, basically the concept being they're putting it onto municipalities to figure out the criteria of what properties could qualify for that subclass. And then the question would be how would the municipality fund the reduction in that area? Would you shift it on to other classes of taxes, or is there some other mechanism that it can be done? So once the details come out, staff will be looking at this. This would be reported back to you as part of our tax policy and ratio report, which happens in April when we finalize sort of the allocation of the pie. It's not on this slide, but it's worth noting in the budget last week, the province also approved $600 million of grant funding to businesses who have been impacted by COVID, that have had to shut down, or they've had to lower the number of occupants in their facilities. And it's to help them pay specifically for municipal property taxes as well as utilities. So hopefully there's an opportunity there. I know there's an online portal that businesses can apply directly to. And then finally, I just want to call out our struggles with assessment appeals. So in 2020, at this point, we have paid out $2.8 million in appeals. So what that means is there were a number of appeals date back 4 or 5 years ago that have reached to come to a settlement on. The last 4 years, I think the total is around just over $8 million. So an average now, we're about $2.1 to $2.5 million a year where we're losing some revenues. So as a result of that, in the 2021 budget, while we paid out $2.8 million, we only have a budget of, I believe it's $625,000 for assessment appeals. So we're recommending an increase of at least $300 and I believe it's $50,000 in the 2021 budget. That'll get us to $1 million. And then we'll incrementally look to be increasing that over the next few years. Realistically, that number is not really probably going to come down in the near future. So we need to build up our ability to pay those charges. So next slide, Ryan. Wastewater, the rate budget. So again, when we put the rate budgets together, we do also take a building block approach. So right now the proposed rate is at 2.48% for water, and that works out to $8.83 for a typical home. It does include some small increases in operating costs. It also includes an increase transferred to the reserve of $516,000. The city does own $625 million of water assets, and we are required under Regulation 453 to maintain a financially sustainable water system. The city staff will be coming forward in 2021 with an update to that water plan as well. The wastewater side has a 2.41% increase, and that works out to $12.21 for a typical home. Again, there's various operating pressures. I believe chemical costs have gone up, and there's also a $1 million increase to the capital reserve. We own assets of $950 million on wastewater. Parking, you're all experts on that. Council recently passed the parking strategy, so I don't think I have to go too deep into this one. I'm sure Rebecca would love to if you have some questions at the end, but ultimately passes are going up 10% on January 2021, and the hourly rates goes up 25 cents on October 21st. Next slide, Ryan. So if we go into budgets, next slide, capital. Just a quick reminder, the direction was a 10-year capital plan addressing both growth and renewal of infrastructure. It also should say in council's strategic priorities. And also it's the maintenance of the city's AA credit rating and fiscal health. Next slide. So the city does have a very robust prioritization process. It does look at the overall risk and criticality of an asset. So when's it going to fail? And if we have the money, we need to obviously fix. We have a limited amount of money, so obviously we need to fix the things with the greatest risk and criticality. We look at the overall financial condition, and we look at availability of resources, and then we look for alignment with council's strategic priorities. And that gets us to where we are today. So next slide. So what's in the plan dollar-wise? The 2021 capital plan sees new funding requests of $170 million, plus the $73 million of previously approved, gives us a grand total of $243 million. You can see the box highlighting some of the key capital plans. I'm not going to list them all too. You can see them. I would just highlight the word construction. You see a lot in that table. And from a financial side, that means once we hit construction and we've signed the contracts, the financial liability is completely created, and there's no turning back, so to speak. So each year when we go through the capital prioritization process, we do review our overall financial health and revenues to see where we are before we make any recommendations. Next slide. So it wouldn't be a capital slide, budget slide if I didn't have another pie chart. So I apologize for some of the small print on this, but I think it's key for you to understand how are we funding this $243 million. If you look at the big green pie piece, that's from the tax capital reserve, so $70 million or 29%. So the dedicated infrastructure renewal fund goes into the tax capital reserve. So each year we increase that contribution by $2.5 million or 1%. The city's been doing that, I think, from about 2015 or 16. That strategy has really improved the city's overall financial health, and it's allowed us to do what we're doing today. So it is an important element of our financial plan. The other next biggest slide is the orange one at 58 million. And of course, that's development charge revenues. And I'll be honest, that's the one where I lose most of my sleep at night thinking about. It's fun being around here at planning meetings. There's certainly a lot of activity, and that's very positive to see from a growing municipality. We see a lot of work going on in the planning department. One of the key elements is we are putting in the infrastructure in the ground to get the development built. And it's important that we actually see some of those DC revenues materialize to help pay for the infrastructure. And then you can see the wastewater reserve there's 20.6 million coming out of it. And the water reserve is almost at 20 million as well. So you may ask yourself, Mr. Miller, and I will stress, my name is actually Mr. Miller. I enjoy listening to Mr. Morales call me Mr. Millar. So even though Andrea Miller spelled with an E, mine's still pronounced the same way. So what does this really all mean? If we go to the next slide, and really the main takeaway is, if you were to add up all our reserves, so our reinvestment reserve, also commonly known as the community benefit reserve, our tax capital reserve, our water reserve, our wastewater reserve, our development charge reserves, if you were to add them all up and look at how much is council approved to spend, this is what this chart's really telling you. So for the end of 2020, there's a number there of almost $9 million. So that means we have $28.9 million we have not committed, which sounds like a large number, but the real important piece, this isn't a cash flow. This is strictly showing you what's being budgeted. And if you look at 2023, there's a red there, and that's the highlight that in that year we've overcommitted ourselves. So on a year-to-year basis, it's not so much the concern, it's really what's the average going forward over the next 5 years. So we have contributions to reserves 21 and 22 that increased quite a bit. That's driven a lot by development charge revenues. That's driven a lot by our annual dedicated infrastructure renewal fund. We increase each year by 2.5 million. It includes our wastewater capital reserves. So if you were to take away one point from this slide, it's really that bottom blue and green. So it's really showing you that over the next 5 years, we're putting away on average over the next 5 years, $184 million, and we're taking out just about the same amount. So if we see major changes on the capital revenues, if they start to decrease, that's when our capital plan will need to be altered. And that's kind of what we watch on a year-to-year basis. So next slide. And again, not to beat the drum, this is just a debt slide because we do get asked about debt a lot. So in 2021, we are recommending to issue $25 million. And again, a lot of that's related to the Harvey Road crossing and the Dunlop Streetscape project. So at the end of 2021, we're forecasting we're at $318 million of outstanding debt. That's fairly similar to where we'll be at the end of 2020. This forecast is what Standard & Poor's uses when they did our assessment this year in October. I do get asked a lot, how much debt can the city borrow before it hurts your credit rating? And it's important to note in the takeaway box there, you can see there's key credit rating factors. They look at a multitude of indicators. One of them, they look at the institutional framework in Canada, so the health of the province, the health of the federal government, and the local government. They look at the national, the provincial, and then the local economy. They look at our track record on financial management and budgetary performance. They look at liquidity, which is to them means, can we pay all our debt payments in a year plus other financial commitments? And then they look at your overall debt burden relative to your overall revenues. So the city, we are well within our debt limits. The city could take on some more debt ranging from 10 to 25 million perhaps this year or next, provided that there's no major shocks to the system. So something to keep in mind as we go forward. Again, when you do take on more debt, it does perhaps limits your ability to do other things in the future, but that's where we stand today. And next slide. And just to wrap up, there's a lot of information thrown at you there. I'm trying to get you really excited for the budget binder that you're going to be getting from the elves. So you'll be getting that shortly. The budget email, budget.questions@barrie.ca, is now open and has been open for a few weeks. So as in prior years, we do ask councillors to send in your questions to the email address. If we get it on a Wednesday, we try and get your answers by Friday, and we distribute that list out. We'll continue that process again. It's helpful when other councillors get to see everyone's questions, and sharing of information is always good. And as I mentioned, the service partners are here on the 11th, and we're back to deliberate on the 18th and hopefully pass on the 25th. So I will stop talking there and pass it over to you, Mayor Lehman.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Miller. The budget binders are to come. So as you said during your presentation, to those following both in the media and the community, this is the starting point of Council's budget process. The partner presentations and discussion of what the budget would contain, plus or minus, will be based on a staff report that will come in mid-January. So just before I take questions from members of General Committee, by way of process, Mr. Miller, what do we expect to know that we don't know today, a month from now? You referenced phase 1 and phase 2 relief funding, which is included in our 2020 considerations. I guess my specific question is, was there any safe restart funding included in the 2021 budget? If not, are you anticipating that we will know better by mid-January whether some of the COVID-related costs that are driving budget pressures for next year will be covered?
Thank you for the question, Mayor Lehman, to members of, through you to members of General Committee. So the Safe Start funding is pretty clear that it's to be used for pressures for 2020. And if there's anything left over to be held for 2021. So we have not used that money as part of our budgeting process. Our auditors that were just here are actually going to make sure that we are using the funds as appropriately. So in a month's time, on January 18th, we'll still be working on our fiscal year end 2020 on December 31st. So that means we still will be chasing down all our invoices, all the information from our partners like the county. So we won't have that final year end number, and we won't have that final number of how much of the Safe Start refund we can use. We will share what we know. It'll still be an estimate, and we'll go from there.
Thanks for that. And just for the benefit of General Committee, one of the reasons I asked that is when the county was presenting their budget about 6 weeks ago, and there is of course a substantial ask of the city of Barrie. One of the answers from county staff was that we could apply Safe Restart funding to those costs because the county, obviously running long-term care and social housing, have some very specific COVID-related costs, which they're passing on to us in Aurelia through the budget requests. With that, I'll open it up to questions from members of General Committee. Councillor Aylwin.
Thanks, Mayor Lehman, and thank you, Mr. Miller, for the clear presentation. It is very helpful how you put it in plain language, and I like how you're kind of casual about it. It's really helpful. On the new possibility of a small business subclass, you mentioned that would be coming in the tax policy and ratio report in April. Will that be a fulsome report looking at implementation of that subclass, or just sort of a general overview once we get a better sense of the provincial regulations around that? Or are you looking for any additional direction from council on something like that?
Mr. Miller.
Through you, Mayor Lehman, to Councillor Aylwin. That's a great question. I was on a call with MPAC and the Ministry of Finance on Friday. We need more information, and apparently there's more information that's coming apparently very soon. They didn't give us a date on that. So based on that, if we have a full understanding of what the regulation is when it's passed, then right away in January, we'd be engaging partners. We'd work with the EDO shop, the BIA, and the chambers to get some feedback. one of the big challenges with this, and what I learned on Friday was this was a request that City of Toronto has been requesting for a number of years. But one of the challenges is identifying the criteria that a property would enter into this class. So that's where the discussion would have to be, looking for input. In terms of the applicability of, can we use it in 2021? If the OREGs pass soon and we have that information, we would certainly look to be doing a wholesome review and reporting back to you in April. And we await for that information. So there is a lot of municipalities and impact are scratching their heads a little bit, just trying to understand the criteria that could be applied.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Owen. Other questions, members of General Committee? Councillor Kungle.
Thank you, Your Worship, through you to Mr. Miller. In part of the presentation, when we were talking about the cap for 2021 tax increase being 1.95%, I thought you referenced that service providers got this message. I wasn't sure if you could elaborate. Is that an expectation when service providers are coming to council, I believe around January 11th, that any asks are under or at 1.95%? Has that been a formal communication?
Mr. Miller.
Through you, Mayor Lehman, to Councillor Kungle. So we do communicate to our service partners the exact motion that council approves, that this is what council's wanting to see. And then they take that, and I believe some of you are on some of the boards and are able to also convey that message. I'm not saying they all achieved that, but they certainly were given the direction.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Kungle. Councillor McCann.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman. And Mr. Miller, isn't it Miller is French? No? Okay. Anyways, I've got about 6 questions. Maybe I'll rip through the questions and then you can let me know if you'd prefer that I type them up so everybody can maybe see them and comment on them, because some of them you may not be able to answer today. I'm not here to make anything awkward or put anything on the spot, but definitely want the answer. So I'll give you the freedom to either let me know if you prefer that I type them up as requested or answer them tonight. Does that sound good? I guess the first question I have is with the MCAP assessment. Has there been any discussion that they may, I guess, what's the opposite of clawing back? Like, you know, clawbacks when they give you and you take it back. But is there any way that they're going to assess the 2020 you know, property values and say, hey, listen, your home is worth X amount of dollars more. You owe this in back taxes 2-3 years from now? Would you know?
Mr. Miller.
Through you, Mayor Lehman, to Councillor McLean. Great question. This was actually asked of MPAC in the province on Friday for the staff level. What's the plan forward? There was none given. So in terms of when is MPAC going to reassess the properties and what will be the phase-in period for it? So right now, no. Basically, the message is the 2021 valuations are based on the 2020 assessment numbers, which is basically the assessment that was done in 2015. So we're still waiting for direction on that, but it won't be an impact on 2021's budget or taxes.
So chances are then, Mr. Miller, because every 4 years you have your assessment, then the earliest you would see a tax increase because of your property values have gone up would be 2022. And if COVID is as chaotic as it has been in the past, it may be even 2023. Would that be a fair guess?
Through you, Mayor Lehman, to Councillor McCann. The province needs to tell MPAC if they're going to, expectation is for them, if they're going to do a reassessment in 2021 pretty soon, for them to pull that off. So if they don't get direction soon, then you'll probably be looking at, I'm again guessing here, perhaps they'll do the reassessment in 2022.
Okay, just a thought, because we get a lot of residents, you know, really obviously complaining about their taxes. I think that's what a lot of residents do. And sometimes it's difficult to make them understand that it's not us always increasing how much they pay every month or every year. It's because their property values went up. And so, and Barrie's had a big boom over the past 4 years. So I'm not sure, I'm sure you have, but maybe I'll just voice my my concern is maybe, Rebecca James Reed and her team, I hope, are preparing to maybe educate our residents that in 2022 or 2023, there could be an increase in taxes that necessarily isn't from the increase that the city of Barrie gave. Good. Thank you. Just, your 7% decrease, right, in your break-even savings, did I hear correctly that basically 7% that we've saved during 2020 has basically been the difference of the savings we had for layoffs and more efficiencies through City Hall through COVID?
So through you, Mayor Lehman, to Councillor McCann. So in the 2021 budget, so the budgeted numbers, we've reduced fees and revenue charges by $7.5 million. And within the budget, we've also reduced, for example, part-time labor costs that are related to those revenues. So it's more or less a net wash. When you actually get your binders, Councillor McCann, and I know you'll enjoy reading it this year, you'll actually probably be surprised to look at the section on overall labor for the city is actually down by about 454,000. Now that's really primarily related to a decrease in part-time salaries. It's also related to our benefit charges. And it's also related to, because of the investment in systems that we have, our ERP system, SAP, and the budgeting system, we're able to actually identify to make sure we're more exact on our budgeting. So there was a bit of opportunity to reduce the budgeted numbers on some of the salaries piece. But it's not 2020 numbers. It's all in the 2021 budget is where it's all captured.
So that brings maybe a second question that I have is, and I'm not sure if this is your decision or your department, but are you thinking about maybe going more to contract workers as a result of the savings on benefits and the savings on salaries?
Through you, Mayor Lehman, again, this is specific to certain service areas like recreation, where the revenues have a cost where you hire someone. So it's part-time already. It's not a fixed cost. It's something you have variable costs that you can modify to adjust. And then transit revenues are down because of the COVID incidents as well. That's already all completely contracted out.
Okay. The $2 to $3 million that you're losing in appeals, I wasn't quite catching fully or digesting fully some practical applications. Could you maybe give a little more detail on what those appeals are, like an example of one?
Yeah, through you, Mayor Lehman, to Councillor McCann. So all municipalities, all particularly businesses, they will, one of their first order of business when they pay property taxes is to really fight hard and appeal the valuations that Impact has given. So some of these appeals, let's say the last valuation was done in 2015. A property owner, a commercial property, doesn't agree with the assessment. They will fight tooth and nail and challenge Impact on their overall approach. So a lot of those properties, for example, if you have a mall, and some of it is actually very, it's legitimate. If you have a building, you have a mall, all of a sudden they value them based on income. So if it's a mall, a building produces so much in income, then they value the assessment accordingly. If you have a building that becomes empty over time and more derelict, the value of that property is less on an income basis. So then the property owners will challenge Impact and make arguments that, you know what, you've overassessed us. So then what happens when those assessments get settled or a resolution, which is to the property owner's benefit, then there's a recalculation. So we paid out, I mentioned, $2.8 million in 2020. That's for tax years that date back from about 2013, 14, 15, right up to the current times, because it takes that long to settle some of these appeals. So it's an ongoing, it's a cost of, for a municipality, it's really a cost of doing business. Where you don't want to see is a situation, if you did have a situation where you had a lot of income generating properties that then become derelict or vacant, it erodes your tax base over time. Now we're not at that stage yet, the city of Barrie, but on average, I think we can expect to pay out about $2 million on assessment appeals that are historical settlements that we're really paying for.
Well, I'm glad I asked that question because that's I wasn't clear in that. So just so I'm crystal clear, the city of Barrie doesn't actually cost them any money. It's the property owners just clawing back the city for money that they owe them. Like, I'm not talking salaries, I'm talking real investment money.
So through you, Mayor Lehman. So at the end of the day, what happens is it is money the city has to pay out of our bank account. But so what it basically is, that property was getting taxed at a higher rate because its assessed value was higher. So MPAC then comes along, they come to a settlement and say, no, actually we agree with you. It's instead of 10 million, it's going to be 5 million. So then we recalculate what the taxes would have been on a $5 million dollar property, and then we have to rebate back the difference to the property owner.
Yeah, no, that's what I was getting at. But there's no administration cost or investigation cost the city has. It's purely a clawback.
So, sorry, through you, Mayor Lehman. So there is an administration cost to the city because that's one of our tax revenue groups is involved, and we have become active participants in some of these hearings just to make sure that the city's represented at the table, and MPAC represents the province. They don't necessarily represent the city of Barrie. So we are involved in that, and there is a cost to us to. It's called active assessment management, and it's something we need to continue to be at the table to make sure we agree with any settlements that do happen.
Active management.
Active assessment-based management.
Okay, thank you. And then maybe another question I have about our $318 million budget. Can you do quick math? How much is, if you reduce the South End water treatment plant, the bridge, and the downtown renovation, how much of that, or is that a question you'd rather I type out for you?
That's a pretty detailed one,
Okay.
Councilor McCann. I'd probably say that's a good one to put through our budget email questions.
Yeah, okay. And I guess two more questions I have, which I think they're going to be pretty in depth, so I may want to type them out, but I'll ask them anyways. You know, the city of Barrie and council have done a fantastic job, you know, managing this COVID, you know, debt, right? I think that we all can say that the end result has been an excellent job. But I know some municipalities weren't as aggressive as making that number as low as possible. They were just business as usual, and they're multi-million dollar, like tens and I'm not sure there's municipalities that are hundreds of millions of dollars in debt or not. I think Toronto was 60 million sometime back in August. How are they going to recoup from COVID? Just to compare what Barrie's done and what they're doing. And should I type that one up too? So that's probably a juicy one.
Councillor McCann, through Mayor Lehman to you. Certainly, you can put that one in there if you want to add more to it. I would say that you are correct. The city of Barrie did act quickly in reducing our costs as part of the phase 2 restart funding in November 6th that council approved the motion for us to apply for. We applied for that, and we did voice our concern that we should be treated equally, or we shouldn't be penalized because we took aggressive action to reduce costs. Now, if they did a pure, simple accounting exercise, the outcome may not be as we hope, but we are hoping that they will take that into consideration. And again, I think also the municipalities that have run transit systems, that have the recreation centers, they're really getting impacted hard. There are a lot of other municipalities that don't provide those services that haven't been impacted as hard as some. So one size does not fit all in the municipal world.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not happy to hear that maybe we won't be compensated for some of our efficiencies, but I guess it's the province has to run the best way it wants to run. And last question I have, you know, there is some interest in council of having a 0% tax increase. I guess my question is, how feasible would that be standing here right now with the amount of information you have in front of you?
Through you, Mayor Lehman, to Councillor McCann. So I do recommend council take some time and do their Christmas reading and look through it. Look at the intake forms that staff have brought forward. Look at the request of some of the service partners. Make sure you're satisfied. As one general manager that used to work at the city of Barrie used to always teach us that, you know, ultimately it's your service levels that drive your costs. So just keep that in mind. In terms of, are there options in there to get to a 0% utilizing a reserve such as the reinvestment reserve? I would say yes. And when we come back to you with the staff report on January 19th, we will have an alternate section recommendation. My one word of caution would really just be is, you're deferring the cost to another year. So we've slow and steady is always the approach you prefer in municipal finance. Is you don't really want big shocks, but COVID happens and you get a big shot. One of the reasons you do have stabilization reserves is to deal with situations like this. So the stronger you are financially, the better you are to help the community out. So I would say certainly do your homework and look at the service levels. And I think there's probably some opportunities for some kind of solution to help get to a lower level for 2021. But I would caution is just remember that might set you back in 2022 and 2023 and some of our big capital plan needs that we want to do.
Well, on that note, Mr. Miller, Merry Christmas.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councilor McCann. Other questions of Mr. Miller? Okay, seeing none, I'll only ask one at this point, Craig. We've all got a lot of reading to do, I'm sure. What is picking up on one of Councilor McCann's questions, what assumption has been baked into the budget at this point with regards to the revenue drops on COVID? So you mentioned the $7.5 million. I assume that is a blend of lower transit revenues, lower no or very little theater revenues, at least for the first couple of quarters of the year. What is the assumption that some of those revenue streams will come back to something like a typical level? What, in Q3, Q4, not at all? What are you forecasting?
Through you, Mayor Lehman, I guess different service areas have sort of budgeted different assumptions in there. I think, the recreation side, it's been removed, the revenues have been removed from the budget and they've removed the costs related to it for the year. Transit, they've lowered their fare revenues. I believe we are looking to increase a little bit more out of our provincial gas tax to help with some of those lost revenues. So most of the COVID related costs have sort of been, I guess we've managed it through reducing our costs, is to be honest with you.
Okay. Actually, a second follow-up question. Did I hear you say correctly that the amount in the budget for labor, by which I assume you mean salaries and benefits of city staff, is lower in 2020? It's forecast to be lower in 2021 than 2020 because of what you just talked about, the costs that have been taken out for ongoing COVID impacts?
Yes, barely, and that's correct. Well, we have our fire union contract. We've made an assumption for QP, which are increases. They have been offset largely by reductions in costs on part-time to offset the lost revenues we're expecting because of COVID. Okay, so all the details will be in the binder, but the $6 million plus or minus increase in the city's operating costs, that's not coming from labor. That's all presumably materials, contracts, and so forth. That's correct. Okay. Well, we will read the details, and I'm sure there's lots and lots to come. This is, of course, the starting point. So thanks for the presentation. Thanks for the questions, members of General Committee. We'll move on from the presentation. There were two items held on the consent agenda tonight. The first one that was held was the Fire Dispatch Service Agreement Staff Report. Councillor Morales, you held that item.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman. Just wanted to, again, we try not to hold too many of these items unless we obviously have questions, we want to vote, or unless it really stands out. For me, it would be this one. Members of council that have, as you read the report, I think it goes to highlight this kind of positive revenue, increasing revenues, increasing cost recovery for our services. We've spoke, I think about 2 months ago, we spoke about innovative ways that staff generated revenue, such as billboards, such as storing empty tanks on our railways. Again, we're not talking $10,000, $20,000. We're talking in the hundreds of thousands of dollars for those two projects, specifically the tanks. Something that stood out for me in this report is we already have the capacity for emergency communications. So essentially, if we approve this report and delegate staff authority to enter into new agreements, while we don't have tangible numbers yet, these are significant, and this will generate hundreds of thousands, possibly millions of dollars for the city of Barrie. And while there is likely to be a small increase in costs in terms of just some staff hours, this is making the city of Barrie more money, and essentially more money with the existing assets that we already have for our own services. So I just wanted to commend Chief Mainprize, Ms. McAlpine as well, and everybody who was involved in essentially creating such a reputation in the region that we have other municipalities saying, hey, our community, let's talk to the city of Barrie about taking care of our emergency communications. And this is very, very important. And again, all departments, doesn't matter if it's recreation, our tracks, or operations. I can think of, do members of council remember pickle sand and how we reduced our sand, our cost of sand, improved the environment, and essentially saved money. So it's these kind of innovative revenue generating or reducing cost initiatives that I really like to see. That's really the only reason I held this. I support the delegating that authority, and I hope that we can not only raise more money, increase revenues ourselves in the city of Barrie, but offer value to our neighboring municipalities with this. So I'll be supporting this, Mayor Lehman.
Thank you. And I think you placed that on the floor as printed at the beginning there.
As floor is printed.
All right. Any other comments on the staff report? Seeing none. Thanks for highlighting it though, Councilor Morales. The city, I've often thought, can play a regional role, and we do play a regional role in Simcoe County and sometimes beyond with our services and our capacity. And the fire department probably plays that role to the greatest extent, both through communications and specialized rescue and service provision agreements that we have across not only Simcoe County, but in fact, Grey and Muskoka and elsewhere. So with that, I'll call the question. The items on the floor is printed. Those in favor? Are any opposed? None. That carries unanimously. Next item that was held is Johnson Street and Little Avenue bike lane implementation. It was held by Councillor Jim Harris. Councillor Harris.
Great, thank you, Mayor Lehman. I'll put it on the floor as printed. And I apologize to staff, I may have some questions. Otherwise, I would have asked them to you earlier, but I did get 2 responses from residents just today. So I just will take the opportunity to ask you now. Just a couple observations. I mean, both for Johnson and Little, obviously the ones that came to me were about Little Avenue, but a 6% return rate on the survey. On both, one was 5.7, one was 6. So just maybe curiosity, is that the rate of return we would generally get on something like this? Maybe through you, Mayor Lehman. I think maybe Ms. Banfield or Ms. Miller. I'm not sure who's available.
Ms. Miller.
Thank you for the question through you, Mayor Lehman, to Councillor Harris. Unfortunately, we don't generally get a great response rate to these type of questions or questionnaires. And we consistently look at other opportunities to get the word out there, but that is a pretty consistent response rate.
Well, thank you. That was going to be my question. Is there a better way to get feedback? And I guess all of us out there watching, or when you get these opportunities, please give us your feedback, because it's hard to make the decisions without your feedback. And so maybe on that, I just curious, do we know of the respondents? And again, this is a question I would have asked earlier if I had more time. As far as those who responded, do we know, the level of, because I've got a general statement of, the feedback, loss of on-street parking, speeding concerns, congestion during school drop-off pickup. But of the 6% that responded, is there consistency in those responses? I don't have that detail on it. So I would have asked earlier offline. I apologize for on the spot questioning. That's through you, Mayor Lehman, to Ms. Miller.
Through you, Mayor Lehman, to Councillor Harris. Unfortunately, I don't have that detail, but staff, generally speaking, will theme the responses and provide you with the trend. Staff have indicated to me by message popping up on my screen right here that it was fairly evenly split.
Okay, because that was my other curious was going to be, did you get any? And I mean, probably doesn't usually happen. Responses in favor. Is that often usually the response usually is the ones that are against the potential change to their environment and their roads, and that's.
Through you, Mayor Lehman, to Councillor Harris, you're right. Generally, when we try and put these questions out, the responses that we get are from people who would prefer not to have the changes made.
Great, thank you. And I don't know if we can, I know Johnson Street, obviously the similarities that they have schools on these roads, and Johnson looks like, obviously from the document, previously accommodated for the school being somewhat different than the rest of the road, as I would understand it. And certainly Bayview to Hearst didn't have restrictions, so it was just some areas clearly had parking. Moving forward, that was one of the concerns in the report: congestion during school drop-off pickup. And if it's no parking, pardon me, you've got your bike lanes and no parking. How? I mean, maybe hard for you to answer. Sorry, this may be about police and enforcement. But how do police generally? I'm sure parents are wondering. Generally, approach those areas where you've got school zone drop-off pickup. That's not considered parking, is it? So I don't know if that's fair to you. That's a question for somebody from law enforcement, not. But does anybody have an experience with that? How it's dealt with, throughout the city? Maybe Ms. McAlpine, I see you rescuing me.
Yep.
Thank you.
It's been a big issue, Ms. McAlpine.
Thank you, Councillor Harris. Through Mayor Lehman to Councillor Harris, the enforcement staff do patrol the school areas for those who are parking in areas that are prohibited or stopped in areas that are prohibited, as do Barrie Police, and as resources permit. However, with the number of schools, there aren't necessarily enough enforcement resources to hit every school at each opportunity. And the enforcement staff would be dealing with any parking violations, and police would be dealing with any moving violations generally. They also have the ability to deal with parked vehicles, but municipal law is restricted to only violations that don't involve a moving vehicle.
Yeah, thank you. And maybe just one last comment. I know if people are watching or impacted, I mean, the On the Move program through the health unit is still ongoing. So if your school is, you're looking at making improvements to your school and the walking to your school, making that easier, please still contact the health unit, because they would be happy to assist your school with improving the walkability in the area, encouraging children to walk to school, and hopefully reduce that congestion that happens outside of schools on these streets that are busy, and hopefully becoming active transportation corridors as well. So anyway, I just wanted to thank you for your, again, for the questions in this on the spot. I appreciate your feedback, both Ms. Miller and Ms. McAlpine. Thank you, Mayor Lehman.
Thank you, Councillor Harris. The items on the floor is printed. Any further comments, members of General Committee? Okay, seeing none, I'll call the question. Those in favor of the staff report? Motion is printed. Anybody opposed? None? That carries. As none of the items for discussion were held, this brings us to inquiries and announcements. I think we'll do that at City Council tonight, immediately following this meeting, members of General Committee, which brings us to the circulation lists. Any items from the circulation list? It is just tonight's, December 14th. I have a couple, but I'll ask if there's any others from members of committee. Councillor Elwin, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman. Just give me 1 second while I pull it up so I have the right number. I would like to move that item A10 from the circulation list, which is the memo regarding the City of Barrie becoming a living wage employer. I'd like to move to refer that to Finance and Corporate Services for further discussion.
Okay, referral motion, so no debate on that. I will call the question. It is to send A10 to Finance and Corporate. Those in favor, please indicate. Any opposed? One opposed. That does carry. So A10 to Finance and Corporate. Any others? Members of General Committee? Councillor McCann.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman. I'm a little disorganized. You had sent an email that kind of derailed me a little bit. Talking about the council strategic priorities. We'd like to discuss that in circulation. Is that in this one right now?
Yes. Yeah, I was
Okay.
about to.
Do you want to go first and I'll go second? Okay.
Sure, and I'm happy to have discussion on it. So A1, the very first item on council circulation list tonight is the summary of the changes to our strategic priorities. My feeling was that didn't quite capture our discussion. For example, there's a small business item that's captured under the downtown. There are small businesses all over our city, and I feel it would be better captured under the economic priority. And I think it's important that it not be captured under the downtown because we want to help small businesses across the city. Similarly, the comment about the chamber. There were a few other wording suggestions that I thought I would make back to staff too. So my intention was to ask a general committee to refer the item back to staff. It's always a mistake for us to try and wordsmith as a committee. Nothing is worse than a statement wordsmithed by a committee. So my thought on process would be to refer it back to staff. And then members of committee, if you have any concerns as to whether or not the wording suggested in the memo captures our discussion as we had it last Saturday, you could just email those suggestions to staff. Then this will come back and we can have the discussion around the table if further conversations required, but I was going to refer it back. I won't put that motion on the floor yet. Councillor McCann, if you want to make any comments or discussion on the matter, or anybody else wants to at this point.
Sure, appreciate that, Mayor Lehman. And I did have some comments. I did talk to staff about some wording and got some clarification. I'm happy with the end wording, and you're not going to get any pushback from me. I think that your advice is sound. I do just want to stress to the City of Barrie, to the BIA, to the Barrie Police, to the Chamber that, you know, our downtown, I do believe, needs some extra focus. And I'm glad that we included that as a sixth priority. And I believe it'd be Ms. Schlichter that would be organizing meetings with the BIA. And I just want to stress, you know, that it wasn't lost, that I would like to see all of council invited and all of the BIA invited, and the members of the police that are, patrolling downtown, to have an ongoing conversation on how to better our downtown. So I guess the question I have for you, Mayor Lehman, is I would like to see this meeting, you know, right after budget. Do you think that's going to derail that plan if you move your motion?
Your thought, Councillor McCann, is that the BIA board be invited to meet with a general committee of council?
Yeah, I thought I made that really clear in the strategic priorities, that there's a lot of he said, she said, and there's a lot of confrontation, I believe, from the BIA to general committee. So I'm glad you're asking the question, because I think I've said it really clearly that I want all of council, or all of general committee, and all of the BIA to be invited to have a real, skull session to get out, the he said, she said, and get a plan so we can clean up our downtown.
Okay, so I guess what I'd urge you, Councillor McCann, yourself, myself, and the clerk can get together and talk about how we can do that under the Act. I do know that, obviously, if we're going to meet as a whole, it'll be a scheduled meeting of council. It'll be a publicly accessible meeting. We can certainly invite BIA board members to attend. I think with Zoom, it's probably easier to set up something like that, and certainly we can talk about other attendees. I think the timing of it would not be affected in the sense that budget will take us through the first couple of meetings in January. So I think that unless we were talking about a special meeting at an earlier date, I would expect that our staff could get this wording back to us sooner, but the wording doesn't affect whether or not we have a special meeting or at least a meeting with the BIA board. I think whether or not it's in the strategic priorities, if that's something council wishes to do, then we can certainly do it. I think likely from a procedural point of view, we'll have to talk to the clerk because we do have to amend the schedule of meetings. I mean, I can call the special meeting of council. I'm happy to do that. But I think I would want some input from members of general committee on when to do that. And I guess my question would be to the clerk, if we wanted to do something during a regular council, well, let me ask that back to Councillor McCann. Was your thought that this should be something that would be part of a regular general committee meeting, or we would be looking for the board to attend at a special meeting at a different time?
So my wish list would be that it would be confidential and that would be a special timing, like a Saturday morning, like we had last time. I'm not sure if we need 5 hours, but maybe yourself or Stephanie Slichter could have a conversation with the BIA board and just see how many points they have to discuss with us. So I guess my wish would be that it would be a special meeting and that it would be closed door. In camera.
And why would it be in camera, Councillor McCann?
Because I want this meeting not to be the friendliest meeting. I want this to get out of all of our laundry. I think there's some animosity between the BIA and council. And I want to say, hey guys, listen, if you're committed to making the city of Barrie the best it can be, if you're committed to cleaning up our downtown and getting people down to our downtown, let's have a, excuse my vernacular, but a skull session, get all the dirty laundry out in the open so we can explain it. Everybody has a clear message and we can visualize how we're going to make the downtown better. I think having it public, I mean, I'm not shy. I'm going to say what I need to say, whether it's in camera or not in camera. But I'd hate to think that there's some maybe members of general committee or some members of the BIA that maybe would not voice their opinions as clearly and as direct as they would in camera, as they would out of camera. So I'm happy either way. I'm just looking out for the group as a whole to be the most comfortable and get the best solutions possible.
Well, I do recognize the concern, but I don't think under legislation that would qualify. I see the clerk shaking her head. I think I want to go to the city's representatives on the BIA board here, because I understand your views, Councillor McCann, but we do have 2 members of council who sit on that board. And I'll go to them now. Could you maybe shed some light on this requested meeting that the BIA board would like to have with general committee? Councillor Morales, and then I'll go to you, Councillor Harris.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman. There was no specific motion per se out of the last meeting for the BIA board to meet with general committee or council. I think what Councillor McCann might just be alluding to is it just comes down to numbers. Aminosity, I think might be a bit of the comments were hyperbole. I think it's not so much attitudes and relationships. I think it's more the BIA, just like the city of Barrie, just like the county, just like service partners, are trying to keep costs low. And there might be a sentiment, I don't want to speak on behalf of the board, that there's some cost that they believe they shouldn't be paying that the city of Barrie should be paying. I'm not trying to downplay the sentiment, and Councillor McCann can clarify if it's something beyond the numbers, but they're just trying to say that there's just concern that the city of Barrie should be paying other monies. Now, if that conversation can be had in camera as it relates to some sort of legal, I don't believe there's any land transaction. We could always take a look, but again, I saw the city clerk nodding her head no. Intuitively, it would seem the response is no, but obviously, I don't believe there's a personality conflict with council or something like that. I think it's just everybody's trying to get their costs down, and it has some real implications. Back to you, Mayor Lehman, if you want to follow up with Councillor Jim Harris and Councillor McCann on that.
Yeah, and I think I'm going to try and steer us back to the item that's on the floor here. I think there's obviously some other issues here that Councillor McCann, you're concerned about. Councillor Morales, you're alluding to some aspect of them. I will give Councillor Harris and Councillor McCann the chance to speak again about it. But then I do want to get back to whether or not we refer the strategic priorities memo back to staff, which is actually the issue that's on the floor. So Councillor Harris, did you want to comment on some of these concerns from the BIA board's perspective?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Lehman. I mean, first of all, I mean, theory, I would never against a dialogue that hopefully can help move something forward. But right now, there's no active ask to have a get together separately and privately with council. But I mean, certainly there are items that the BIA has questions about, and from their own perspective, and historically from their own initiatives apart from council. So I don't think there's any issues that at this point that require closed door sessions, but certainly issues that require maybe further clarity and conversation and investigation. That's fair. So yeah, I think the BIA has, like every other business and organization, had its challenges through the last 9 months, and it's highlighted some items that of concern, and going forward is really, really challenging. So even in that positive aspect of, we talked about our planning day, to really, how can we help our businesses, all small businesses, including the BIA. So there's lots of opportunity as we move out of COVID to really set our plans for having a positive recovery for our community, which includes the BIA in the downtown. So there's lots of positives to getting together. It's not about negatives either. There's lots of opportunity for us to move forward together. So.
Okay, Councilor McCann, I'll come back to you.
Yeah, sure. Nothing really more to add, but I agree wholeheartedly with the representatives at the BIA, and I think it's time. It's ready. It's a new world out there, and I think having one of our specialists, which are the BIA, I know from personal conversations that they want this. The majority want this to have a chance to sit with us, and if we can make it a training session, that would be great. If we can't make it a training session, then I'm happy having it open to the public. I just think that getting the two pillars of our downtown, the city of Barrie and the BIA together, and get a visualize on something we all can agree on and move forward. And let's turn that downtown around.
Okay, so what I'll just suggest based on the comments as well from the two members of the board, if the board has a chance to send some correspondence to City Council saying, look, we'd like a meeting, we want to talk about this, that will help. If there is some aspect that's confidential and should be confidential, we can do that. Certainly, so far, it sounds like the matters should be discussed where the public can see and hear them. But either way, it would be great to have that correspondence from the board, and we can then proceed to set something up. On the matter that's on the floor, or that I would like to put on the floor, is there anyone else who wanted to comment on the strategic priorities themselves? Okay, at this point, I'm going to refer to staff, and my thought would be that you can email if you have specific suggestions on the wording to reflect our discussion last Saturday. So I will refer that matter A1 to staff, and I'll call the question. Those in favor of referring it back to staff, please indicate. Is anyone opposed? None? That carries. The other one that I wanted to refer back is A7. Sorry, and that's not refer back to staff. A7 is the memo on the transit hub at Allendale. I know this is a project of considerable community interest. It's also important because it potentially is the timing, and it affects a couple of other potential projects. And I think it would be useful for us. I think the community will be interested, but I think committee may also be interested in the information that's being given on the project timelines and details right from the outset. So I'm sorry, Councillor Jim Harris, because this is a matter in your ward, and I should have given you the heads up, but since I'm referring it, there wouldn't be any change tonight. It's just the opportunity to discuss it further. I'd like to refer it to Finance and Corporate Services Committee. And the reason for that is it is a facilities department project and memo, so properly it would go to Finance and Corporate. So I will put that on the floor, that A7 be referred to Finance and Corporate. And I will call the question. Those in favor of referring that one? Anybody opposed? None? That carries. Thank you for that. Any other comments on the circulation list? Members of General Committee? Seeing none, that completes General Committee's agenda for the evening, and General Committee is adjourned. I would like to proceed right to council unless there are any objections. I think we have a relatively short council agenda tonight. We can take a break if members would prefer. Are you good with continuing and attempting to get it all done in one go? Councillor Harvey?
Just quickly, just because I see the time, I just had a pop-up on my computer shortly ago that my computer is going to automatically reboot in less than a minute. So if you see me disappear, that is why.
I got burned by one of those too the other day. We are going to have to try and find a way to make sure that doesn't happen on members' laptops during meetings. If we lose you, Councillor Harvey, one thing I'd suggest, I had to come back on my phone. I don't know how strong your Zoom is, but I won't go too quickly if we lose you. How's that? Okay. With that, Madam Clerk, do you need any time to prepare for City Council?
No, I am totally prepared, but Rogers wasn't able to start broadcasting us until 7, so I'm not sure if you want to wait and start the council meeting at 7 when Rogers can join the broadcast.
Yeah, that's a fair point. I didn't realize they couldn't go faster. Well then, Councillor Harvey, you will get your reboot time because I think we probably should wait. It's surprising how many people watch us through that broadcast, and we'd hate to disappoint them. So we will take a 15-minute break, but do come back and log on at 6:55 in about 10 minutes, and we will start City Council promptly at 7 p.m. Thanks very much, folks. General Committee's adjourned. We'll see you at 7.
No new feed, correct? The same feed, just turn cameras off.
Same link, yep.
Hey, Mayor Lehman, I see you got your ears lowered.
Got rid of the embarrassing COVID beard. That chin strap was not doing it for anybody, let me tell you. This is making great live television, by the way, for all of us on YouTube.
I did have two constituents mention the chin strap, actually.
And I'm going to say, as a concern, yeah. It's actually number 4 top concern received by Service Barrie.
Yeah.
Why that? So I'm listening.
The estate of Abraham Lincoln said thank you.
Thank you for the comparison. At least my beard might be compared, if nothing else.
Councillor Harvey's feeling left out. We normally talk about his hair.
I'm just glad the public doesn't pay as much attention to my hair as apparently they do the mayor's chin strap.
Okay, folks, we'll get started in just a few seconds here.
Please rise as you are able. I now call this meeting of City Council to order.
We acknowledge that this meeting is taking place on the traditional land of the Anishinaabe people. The Anishinaabe include the Odawa, Ojibwe, and Potawatomi nations, collectively known as the Three Fires Confederacy. We're dedicated to honoring Indigenous history and culture and committed to moving forward in the spirit of reconciliation and respect with all First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people. Please be seated. Welcome everyone to our virtual council meeting. I'd like to remind everyone, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, City Council is continuing to practice physical distancing with members of council, executive management team, and the city clerk participating via video conference. Members of the senior leadership team that have items on the agenda tonight are not visible, but are available to answer any questions. And special credit to Councillor Gary Harvey for having the Christmas tree from A Grinch Stole Christmas over his right shoulder. That is a nice detail, sir. Our first item on the agenda tonight is confirmation of the minutes. The minutes of the City Council meeting held on December 7th, 2020 have been circulated. Are there any corrections to the minutes, members of council? Okay, seeing none, the minutes are adopted as printed and circulated. We have no awards or recognition items on tonight's agenda or reports from officers. That brings us to deputations on the committee reports. Madam Clerk, have we had any requests for deputations on the committee reports tonight?
No, Mary Lehman, we have not.
Okay, then we can proceed to the committee reports themselves. Deputy Mayor Ward, I believe you have the motions. Go ahead.
I do. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Thompson, that Section A of the General Committee Report dated December 5th, 2020 be received.
Thank you. It's moved by Deputy Mayor Ward, seconded by Councillor Thompson, that Section A of the General Committee Report dated December 5th, 2020 be received. Comments or questions? It's to be received. Seeing none, those in favor of Section A, please indicate. Is anyone opposed? None. That carries. Section B, please.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Thompson, that Section B of the General Committee Report dated December 5th, 2020 be received.
Thank you. It's moved by Deputy Mayor Ward, seconded by Councillor Thompson, that Section B of the General Committee Report dated December 5th, 2020 be received. Comments or questions on Section B? Seeing none, those in favor of Section B? Are any opposed? None. That carries. Section C, please, Deputy Mayor Ward.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Thompson, that Section C of the General Committee Report dated December 5th, 2020 be adopted.
Thank you. It's moved by Deputy Mayor Ward, seconded by Councillor Thompson, that Section C of the General Committee Report dated December 5th, 2020 be adopted. Comments or questions on Section C? Councillor Aylwin.
If I'm not mistaken, this is the updates to our strategic priorities. Are we referring this to staff as well?
Thanks for the question, Councillor Owen. No, I didn't intend to, because the committee report just contains the general wording. The actual matter of the wording is coming back to council by a separate memo, and that's what I referred back earlier. So I was okay with section C. Any other comments or questions on section C? Okay, seeing none, I'll call the question. Those in favor, please indicate. Any opposed? None? That carries. The general committee report from earlier this evening, December 14th, Deputy Mayor Ward.
I have one from December 7th here. Are we on December?
I'm sorry. Yeah, the number on the motion form is tonight. I read the number on the motion form, not the date of the meeting. It is the general committee report dated December 7th. Sorry, go ahead, Deputy Mayor Ward.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Thompson, that section A of the general committee report dated December 7th, 2020 be adopted.
Thank you. It's moved by Deputy Mayor Ward, seconded by Councillor Thompson, that section A of the general committee report dated December 7th, 2020 be adopted. Comments or questions? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Those in favor of section A? Any opposed? None? That carries. Section B, please.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Thompson, that section B of the general committee report dated December 7th, 2020 be received.
Thank you. It's moved by Deputy Mayor Ward, seconded by Councillor Thompson, that section B of the general committee report dated December 7th, 2020 be received. Comments or questions on section B to be received? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Those in favor of section B? Any opposed? None? That carries. Section C, please.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Thompson, that section C of the general committee report dated December 7th, 2020 be received.
Thank you. It's moved by Deputy Mayor Ward, seconded by Councillor Thompson, that section C of the general committee report dated December 7th, 2020 be received. Comments or questions on section C? Seeing none, those in favor of section C, please indicate. Are any opposed? None. That carries. Section D, please.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Thompson, that section D of the general committee report dated December 7th, 2020 be adopted.
It's moved by Deputy Mayor Ward, seconded by Councillor Thompson, that section D of the general committee report dated December 7th, 2020 be adopted. This specifically is the Fisher Auditorium Center report back, and this is to be adopted. Comments or questions? Okay, seeing none, I'll call the question. Those in favor? Any opposed? None. That carries. Okay, Deputy Mayor Ward, this is the December 14th general committee, tonight's meeting. Section A, please.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Thompson, that section A of the general committee report dated December 14th, 2020 be received.
Okay, it is moved by Deputy Mayor Ward, seconded by Councillor Thompson, that section A of the general committee report dated December 14th be received. And I'll just read what's on these ones since this was tonight's meeting and it wasn't printed on the agenda. So it is the report of the City Building Committee from December 1st and the report of the Finance and Corporate Services Committee from December 14th. It's to receive the reports of those meetings. Comments or questions? Seeing none, those in favor of section A? Anybody opposed? None? That carries. Section B, please.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Thompson, that section B of the general committee report dated December 14th, 2020 be adopted.
Okay, it is moved by Deputy Mayor Ward, seconded by Councillor Thompson, that section B of the general committee report dated December 14th, 2020 be adopted. This one contains all except for the items that were held in the general committee just previously. So I'm going to read them. Inclusive Community Grant, the Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan, and the Audit Service Plan. Those were the motions out of Finance Committee. The item on Bill 197, the Economic Recovery Act, that's development requirements for landfills. A safety review for pedestrians and cyclists at Tiffin and Lakeshore, and implementing the urban forest action item from the climate change adaptation strategy. Those were the three motions from City Building Committee that were approved by General. Then earlier on tonight's agenda by consent, General Committee approved the sewer use bylaw, the waste management bylaw, both are updates, a repeal and replacement of a designating bylaw for 70 and 72 High Street, a staff report concerning heavy truck traffic on Dunlop Street through the downtown, and the items for discussion placed by members of council, the investigation of classifying industrial roadways as primary roads for snow plowing, additional traffic safety measures on White Oaks, a letter of support to the Barrie Pickleball Club for a grant application, Barrie Municipal Nonprofit Housing Corporation, the council appointment, support for the Redwood Park Communities application to the Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation for the Rapid Housing Funding Initiative, easy for me to say, and an item regarding the 400 Cup Pond Hockey Tournament. Those items were all approved by consent at General Committee earlier tonight. Any comments or questions on any of them by members of council? Okay, seeing none, I'll call the question on section B. Those in favor? None are opposed. That carries unanimously. Section C, please.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Thompson. Section C of the General Committee report dated December 14th, 2020 be received.
Thank you. It's moved by Deputy Mayor Ward and seconded by Councillor Thompson that Section C of the General Committee report dated December 14th, 2020 be received. It's to receive the presentation from earlier on the business plan and budget. Comments or questions? Okay, seeing none. Those in favor of receiving the report, please indicate. Any opposed? None. That carries. And Section D, please, Deputy Mayor Ward.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Thompson, that Section D of the General Committee report dated December 14th, 2020 be adopted.
Thank you. It's moved by Deputy Mayor Ward, seconded by Councillor Thompson, that Section D of the General Committee report dated December 14th, 2020 be adopted. These were the two items that were held: the fire dispatch service agreements, authority to add complement, and the Johnson Street and Little Avenue bike lane implementations. Comments or questions on these matters? Councillor Thompson.
Through you, Mayor Lehman, maybe to Ms. McAlpine or Ms. Cook. Do we have a provision in our parking bylaw for parking in a bike lane? Or is that already there?
Ms. McAlpine.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman. Through you to Councillor Thompson, there are already provisions within the city's traffic bylaw that prohibit parking within a bike lane. And I believe it's also covered under the Highway Traffic Act.
Yeah, I'm familiar with the Highway Traffic Act portion of it. I was just wondering, because you said that the municipal bylaw is for non-moving offenses. So if somebody was parking it in, I didn't know if we had a provision for the increased fine, which is sometimes the deterrent from people making it unsafe for the cyclists to weave in and out of parked cars. Thank you. That's all. Thanks for the clarification.
Thanks, Councillor Thompson. Any other comments or questions on Section D? Seeing none, I'll call the question on that. Those in favor of Section D? Any opposed? None? That carries unanimously. Now, I know we went pretty quickly through that, and there are probably some folks watching who were not online or because we're being broadcast on Rogers, didn't get the chance to view General Committee earlier tonight. We did have a heavy agenda, but only a few items that were discussed. But tonight, Council has also ratified some items from the previous couple of weeks. So there is more detail certainly on all of this on the website in terms of the individual items that are reviewed, and watch for the minutes in the coming days online as well. With that, I believe we have completed the committee reports. Deputy Mayor Ward, I think we have.
We have,
yes. Okay. We have no deferred business or direct motions on council's agenda tonight, which brings us all the way to inquiries of staff. Deputy Mayor Ward, any inquiries?
I have none.
Members of council. Councillor Kungle.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Mr. Miller. So it's this time of year where, at least I'm finding, I'm not sure about colleagues around the council table, many questions from residents regarding property taxes. And so this question is specific to our 2021 upcoming year, knowing that we deferred for those residents that were in an automatic withdrawal. We actually changed to have a November and December property tax withdrawal. And it raised some questions recently about what they can expect for next year. Just for those watching and for consistency in messaging, it's my understanding that we're going back to the original 10-month automatic withdrawal schedule, but wondering if you could confirm that or add any additional information for the public.
Through you, Mayor Lehman, to Councillor Kungal. Thank you for the question. Yes, we are, as we indicated on the circulation list, December 7th, we had a memo there just to explain that COVID was an unusual year. We extended the payment dates, which modified the monthly pack payments for folks. Unfortunately, we didn't have the systems to allow people to opt into one choice or the other. It was kind of an all or nothing approach. So for 2021, we are going back to the ways of the past. Residents can expect an interim billing at the end of December into early January, which will call out the payment dates of end of February and the end of April. And then those that are on the monthly payment plans will go back to having their taxes paid over 10 months, starting at the end of January.
That's great. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Miller. Any other inquiries of staff? Seeing none. Deputy Mayor Ward, any announcements?
No announcement.
Any announcements, members of council? Councillor Elwin.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman. It's one of my favorite times of year in downtown Barrie. Love living down here at this time of year. All the beautiful lights in Heritage Park, in Meridian Place. So I'd like to draw the public's attention to Noella, which is an event, a series of events put on by the Downtown Barrie Business Association. There's tons to do in downtown Barrie. Get your Christmas shopping done. Your holiday shopping done at our local small businesses in the downtown. I see lots of people out doing that on a regular basis, and it's really heartwarming to see the community stand by our local small businesses. So lots to do, and people can check that out at noella.downtownbarrie.ca or by following Downtown Barrie at Downtown Barrie on all social media. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Owen. Any other announcements, members of council? Okay, seeing none, I promise I'm not going to read all of the announcements that are on these sheets, but I'm going to do a number of them. First of all, I wanted to proclaim December 14th to December 20th as Salvation Army Week in the city of Barrie, and just note that the kettle campaign has to look quite a bit different this year. They cannot do kettles in all the locations, especially with the move into red zone. So please do look for your opportunity to support this worthy cause in our community. I am pleased to announce that the Dunlop Street construction project has come to an end. Our new improved 1.5 kilometers of Dunlop from west of Points to Toronto Street through the downtown is complete. For further information, please visit barrie.ca/digdowntown. And as Councillor Aylwin mentioned, shopping downtown this December, this Christmas season, you can enjoy free parking on street and at the Chase McEachern parking lot for the first 2 hours throughout the month of December. And of course, parking remains free after 5 p.m. and all day on weekends. But you do need your waterfront pass for the waterfront parking lots. Overnight parking restrictions, of course, are now in effect. We might need them tonight, I hope not. 12 midnight till 7 a.m. You must have your cars off the street, except in the downtown BIA, where it's between 3 and 6, the downtown area, 3 and 6 a.m. And on a related note, Snow Angels continues to connect volunteers with people who need help with clearing their driveway on a volunteer basis. The website for that is snowangelscanada.ca. We are accepting nominations for a few more days for the 2020 Mayor's Innovation Awards, including businesses, individuals, and community groups in Barrie who have demonstrated innovative solutions to both the challenges of 2020 and new models and new ways of doing business in our community. The ceremony will be online in February 2021. That's at investbarrie.ca/innovation awards if you wish to nominate a business. It is budget time. Our budget allocator tool will be active until December 18th, the end of this week. So if you haven't yet had a chance to use the budget allocator and give us your feedback on how you feel your tax dollars should be spent, this is the way for you to do it, or a way for you to do it. Of course, you can also email and contact members of council through all of our channels of communication. The official plan and citywide urban design guidelines are open for comment for one more week until December 22nd. That's at buildingbarrie.ca/official plan. A couple of things related to changing service levels with COVID. Beginning today, Barrie will be offering virtual live stream fitness classes to existing Rec Pass members as a pilot program. So for the first 2 weeks, virtual classes will only be open to current Rec Pass members. And then beginning on December 21st, virtual classes will be open to all rec users with an online account. You do have to pre-book at play.barrie.ca. And there's more information on the website at barrie.ca/rec updates. The city is also selling winter fun in a bag containing family items to create special memories at home throughout the holiday. Bags are $10 each and are available for curbside pickup at the rec centers for rec account holders. And I know our staff are working on ways to make that available more easily to the community as well. So for those who are concerned that they couldn't get in through play.barrie.ca, we hope to have more information out on how to get those more easily in the next few days. December 18th to the 3rd, we will be offering free swims and indoor skating during select dates and times at rec centers. Now, with the red zone restrictions, there will be tighter limits on capacity. So please make sure you register at play.barrie.ca. You can't just show up and you may be disappointed if you do, but do register and take advantage of that if we can. And in lieu of the traditional downtown countdown on New Year's Eve, we will be taking that New Year's Eve celebration online, including Splash and Boots for the kids. Stay tuned to our social media channels, and the show will be at 7 p.m. So just some notes. As part of the red control level, there are some further restrictions that have been added, and this will mostly affect things like restaurants and bars, meetings and event spaces, stores, and also recreation centers and sports. So gatherings are limited to 5 indoors and 25 outdoors, but the health unit does continue to strongly advise that people only have close contact with their direct household. Workplace screening does need to take place. Face coverings are required in all indoor public spaces. And the restrictions that I'm referring to in terms of sports and recreation center activities are all outlined both on Ontario's website under the COVID-19 section and on the health unit's website. We also put out a press release on Friday so that you can find that information on the city's website and in local media. But if I can just say before we move on to bylaws, we do have a brief council meeting tomorrow. So I won't sign off, and we'll save happy holidays and Merry Christmas for tomorrow. But I did want to say, as we're entering the red zone today, this is the time to double down on your support for small and local businesses and for charities. And I threw a bit of a challenge out there, the 4x4 challenge yesterday. I'm going to try and push that out a little bit more, and I won't go through it all tonight, but I just wanted to say to those watching, and I know I speak for members of council, this is the time to help out those who need help, and those in our community who need help are many of the recipients of the Christmas drives, the support programs that we depend on in our community, from the food bank to Christmas Cheer and to the Busby Center and many other organizations in our community that do very, very good work. Please, if you haven't yet, in these last few months and in the Christmas season, please support a local charity. If you can, every amount makes an impact. And also, when you're making choices about how you spend money over the next 10 days in the lead up to Christmas, please do buy local. It sometimes takes a little bit more work online to find a local or unique option, but boy, it makes a big difference. And whether that's takeout from a restaurant, however minor, takeout lunch or whatever it is that you order to support them, now's the time, folks, because they're going to need us over the next couple of months, the charities, the restaurants, and our local businesses. So let's keep it up and let's support them with our choices over the next couple of months. We will get through it. The other thing I wanted to note was the first vaccination in Ontario was administered today at UHN hospital in Toronto, and I went to a PSW who works in a long-term care home, and she's been pulling double shifts through COVID. Just an amazing story, and I'm really glad to see that process finally beginning today. But what a miracle of science it is that we're starting already 10 months after the vaccine or the virus was even mapped to begin to protect people against it. So there is light at the end of the tunnel, but in the meantime, hopefully we can all do what we can to support each other through these next couple of months. Okay, general committee, or at least we do have a couple of committee meetings tomorrow, but with that, I will move to the bylaws, and I'll just confirm that meeting time at the end before we adjourn, but go ahead with the bylaws, Deputy Mayor Ward.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Thompson, that leave be granted to introduce the following bill, and this bill be read a first, second, and third time this day and finally passed. Bill 120.
Thank you. It's moved by Deputy Mayor Ward, seconded by Councillor Thompson, that leave be granted to introduce the following bill, and this bill be read a first, second, and third time this day and finally passed. Bill 120. Comments or questions? Seeing none, those in favor, please indicate. Anybody opposed? None. That's carried. Confirmation bylaw, Deputy Mayor Ward.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Thompson, that leave be granted to introduce the following bill, and this bill be read a first, second, and third time this day and finally passed. Bill 121.
Thank you. It's moved by Deputy Mayor Ward and seconded by Councillor Thompson that leave be granted to introduce the following bill, and this bill be read a first, second, and third time this day and finally passed. Bill 121. Any comments or questions? Seeing none, those in favor, please indicate. Any opposed? None. That carries. So tomorrow, members of committee, we do have general committee and planning committee, and I'll just confirm planning committee is a 7 o'clock start, Madam Clerk.
Through you, Mayor Lehman. Yes, planning will start at 7 o'clock. General will start at 5 p.m. General is a closed meeting, so that will be taped, and the public portion will be put on YouTube after the fact. And council will all depend on the timing of whether general committee finishes at 6:30 or if we have to continue after planning.
Okay, and the planning committee meeting includes a public meeting for Mapleview and ESSA and one staff report, the staff report on the Bradford Street development of the Smart Centers development, which is on tomorrow night, and that will be at 7 and that will be live cast. Okay, with that, can I have a motion to adjourn City Council for tonight? Councillor Thompson, seconded by Councillor Natalie Harris. We are adjourned. We will